Hi, I'm Brother Ryan, a sibling in the Order of Lutheran Franciscans, or OLF. In the first 2 weeks of Advent, Brothers Jeff and Ken talked about our order's participation in nonviolence through the lenses of poverty and chastity. Today, we are briefly exploring the power of nonviolence active in our vow of obedience. Like the vows of poverty and chastity, there is a deep power in committing to the principle of obedience of our own volition. Like the other vows, imposed obedience is oppression, but chosen obedience is liberation. According to our general rule, siblings in the OLF allow themselves to be joyfully formed by the wisdom of this order's leadership, the pastoral leadership of their respective congregations, work supervisors, spouses, and their fellow siblings of this order. They will strive to keep their hearts from every tendency and yearning for possession or power. By extension, the vow forms us to seek the Spirit's wisdom wherever it may be found. You might notice our rule does not bind us to obey all who might give us lawful orders. Martin Luther wrote that Christians ought not to resist their governments, and in fact, to do everything possible to assist government agents. Fortunately, we are not bound to heed Martin Luther in all things. Many of you probably know that Luther's writings on Jewish people are not godly wisdom, but they were used to create laws and fuel profound anti-Semitic harm, especially in World War II. And so, we are called to discern the godliness of laws on God's terms, not Martin Luther's. Jesus was questioned during his ministry about obedience to human law and the tension that can create with obedience to God's law. Whole sermons are preached on the question of paying imperial taxes and the cunning response Jesus gave, asking whose image is prominent and to whom obedience is due. If something bears God's image, then it belongs to God and must be given to God. From the beginning, humanity is created in the image of God, and so we owe our own life to God, and in all we do with it, we are called to honor the one whom we reflect and resemble. Further, our Franciscan tradition teaches that the created cosmos is our first Bible, the way we first experienced God's love and discerned her identity. Where God can be found, God must be honored. We embrace the good that laws can create, but we know that laws are made and enforced by people, and people can take action under the influence of both sin and ignorance. We are not always righteous. There are unjust laws, and they, by their mere existence, cause violence. Obeying them would make us complicit in their violence. So we come to the practice of nonviolent civil disobedience. Honoring the image of God in humanity and creation sometimes means being disobedient to unjust human laws. We saw dramatic use of this principle during the Civil Rights Movement in the middle of last century. Individuals and groups like the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee took part in lunch counter sit-ins, bus boycotts, freedom rides, and peaceful marches. Nonviolent civil disobedience always involves being prepared to face the legal consequences of the disobedience, an integral part of exposing the injustice of the law. Our prime example of this submission to consequence to expose injustice is no less than Jesus himself dying on the cross. Notable international displays of civil disobedience include India's Salt March and Tiananmen Square's Tank Man, and we continue to see nonviolent resistance to injustice in the Poor People's Campaign, the Black Lives Matter movement, Jewish Voice for Peace, and many others in the ongoing struggles of marginalized, oppressed people everywhere. Civil disobedience is a valuable tool in the pursuit of nonviolent justice, but it's far from the only one. Other tools in the box include learning from the wisdom of marginalized people who have been compensated for the labor of educating you, amplifying the voices of marginalized people to whom you have deeply listened and with whom you have formed relationship, wrestling with your own discomfort when you learn about injustice you participate in, advocating for just policy with decision makers at every level of government, and having hard conversations with people in your communities who share your privilege. It is obedience to God to follow the lead of marginalized communities. We, and you, are called to demonstrate the injustice of oppressive systems' violence by the contrast of our own passionate nonviolence. It is obedience to this wisdom that liberates us, our neighbor, and the whole world.